First rule of engagement is that they actually click on the thing. How can you use the podcast as a way to point people towards your products and services? Maybe you just need like a little bridge to get them in that customer journey. It was the coach for the Savannah Bananas. He was saying it is almost not worth it to do a podcast that's only audio because of what you can get from the videos.
We know in the metrics in LinkedIn, you actually get a rating bump on LinkedIn when you create a newsletter.
If I can tell this is AI, I skip it. I don't want to be skippable. That really is going to be your best method, at least that we've seen so far, for creating an effective podcast ecosystem. Create systems to make sure you do these things. You will have an effective podcast over time. This is Grow Your Podcast, produced by the Cincinnati Podcast Studio. Today, we're going to be talking about the 3 pillars for effective podcasting. It's great that you posted your podcast to YouTube, to Spotify, to Apple Podcasts, etc. But if you really want your podcast to be effective, that's actually not enough. And so today, Brian Erickson, my co-founder, and I are going to walk you through the 3 pillars for effective podcasting to make sure that your podcast is as successful as it possibly can be.
And if you look in the description, we're going to be writing some stuff on Josh's iPad. Well, Josh is going to be writing, so you can judge his handwriting if you want. We're going to basically be showing you how all of these pillars work, and we will make that a downloadable asset that you can use when you're thinking about how can you make your podcast as effective as possible.
Let's go through kind of these 3 different pillars that we've come up with. So the first one is pointing to the podcast, right? Mm-hmm. We have to figure out what are ways that we can drive as much traffic as possible to the podcast on the different platforms, right? The second is how do we get people to engage with the podcast? The ideas around it, actually listening and watching to it, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And then how do we use the podcast to point to other products and services, right? So I think let's go through each one and then see if we can identify, here's one that we really think everybody should do, and here's things that we've seen successful people do, Colin and Samir, Diary of CEO, whoever.
Yeah.
These people do this and they're awesome ideas.
Okay.
All right.
I like
so
that.
let's hit up this first one. So we've got these 3 pillars here. They're not exactly to scale, but that's fine. So the first one is, how do you point to the podcast?
Mm-hmm.
And I have very slow handwriting, but that is totally fine. All right, so pointing to the podcast.
Look at how you got like a nice straight line when you drew that line.
Right?
That was cool. Huh. I never used digital things like this anymore.
Freeform, the Freeform app is like when you don't have a whiteboard, this is where I sat.
You and your whiteboards, man.
Dude, for real.
He's been begging me to put a whiteboard in the studio. We haven't done it yet.
Obsessed with them. I actually, what Apple needs to do is compete with the Vibe board and put like a freaking huge iPad on and then have the Freeform app. That would be sick. All right, I digress.
Interesting, or at least an integration. That'd be cool.
Yeah. So Tim Cook, you don't even have to like give me royalties or anything. Just take that for free. All right. So pointing to the podcast, what are things that we've seen that were like, okay, these things like are non-negotiables. Like, please, everybody should be doing this thing to point to their podcast.
Well, I mean, the biggest one, the one we always talk about here in the studio is short form.
Yep, short form video.
You need to take clips all the time. Anytime that you have a podcast guest, make as many good clips that you can out of it. We may talk about in some later episodes about how to make a good short out of this sort of stuff, but just make shorts.
Yep.
Now, here's the one suggestion that we do have is if you're using a tool like an Opus Clips or another thing like that, not every single piece, every short that you're going to get is actually going to be any good.
Yes.
So don't just be the person that creates 40 shorts and upload all of those shorts and just assume that they're all going to do well. Like, quality will do better than quantity.
Yes. I think that's very well said, because like right now AI does not trump, in our experience, and we've tried several tools. AI does not trump the human eye and the creative mind in actually selecting those clips. And so, yeah, it's very important to make sure that whatever you choose is very short. And even in a episode we did with Angie Snowball, who's a LinkedIn expert.
If you guys haven't watched that episode, you need to go back. It was
it's
amazing.
Right there. You can click on it if you're, or it's in the description. But like Angie was talking about, like, if you can like pick clips that are more around a like specific question, like you're answering a question, that is super helpful. So, and that may be even a way to frame up your conversation, is like trying to pose a question and answer it, that kind of thing.
It's usually either pose a question, share knowledge, or comedy.
Yep.
Those three usually rule supreme when it comes to short form.
And I'm really bad at dad jokes, so.
Oh man, don't get me started.
Right. All right. So short form video, that's kind of like, if you are doing a video podcast, actually, I even heard recently there was a client that was in here yesterday, and he specifically said right before the recording to his guest, he's like, no, the guest said this. He was saying, I wouldn't even do a podcast if there wasn't video attached to it. Like, actually, it was the coach for the Savannah Bananas.
Yeah.
And he was saying, like, with what they have been learning through content marketing and stuff, like, it is almost not worth it to do a podcast that's only audio because of what you can get from the video. So yeah, short form video, make sure you have really good clips from that point to the full length episode. What are some other things you've seen that were like, yeah, everybody should do this?
Well, I recommend, one of the things that we talk about a lot, and we've heard a lot of content creators talk about, is the idea that you need to own your distribution a little bit.
Own distribution, yeah.
So like because a lot of people make their businesses, like there were a ton of people who made their businesses on TikTok. And then TikTok was almost banned.
Yep.
They almost lost their entire livelihood.
Yep.
So like, you have to be able to find a way to be able to own a little bit of your distribution, because also podcast distribution platforms, unless if you're subscribed, are terrible.
Yep.
There's no good ones out there other than YouTube. And Spotify's
for discoverability. Yep.
Yeah. So when I think about something that points to your podcast, a newsletter is a huge part of this.
Yep.
Like having something that you email people out on that have subscribed to you, subscribe to that letter, and then you have the ability to give a slightly longer version of why they should watch that episode.
Yep. I think that's great. Yeah. Also, what's cool about newsletters is it's very similar to short form video in that you are hitting a different kind of audience. So I know a lot of people who would much rather read than listen or watch something.
Yeah.
My wife is actually one of them. And so like we subscribe to like this same like media thing, and she will read the emails. I will listen to the podcasts. And so it just, you will be hitting somebody else a little bit different if that newsletter also kind of takes from the content from the full length podcast. And so just like the short form, you're hitting a different kind of audience. With the newsletter, you can also do that. And like when we say newsletter, this can be, I would actually recommend do email. And if you're a business, do LinkedIn newsletter. Like having especially both B2B, of those things. Oh my goodness. That is like, it just gets you in the algorithm and different things. It's another kind of content to post. So let's great.
Hold on that point for a second here, because one of the things that people always talk about is the fabled algorithm, right? Like they talk about that a lot. And I think one of the things that's important to note specifically about LinkedIn is you and I have done a ton of research into this. We had Angie on the show. Like you had Angie on this show.
Yes.
This is
You've
not
had
my show.
Angie
I've
on
had
your
Angie
show,
on my
too.
show too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shout out Cincinnati Business Podcast. Yes.
But the thing that is really important to understand is that we know in the metrics in LinkedIn, you actually get a rating bump on LinkedIn when you create a newsletter.
Yeah.
Like they literally tell you, we will recommend you more to people.
Yes.
If you have a newsletter.
Yeah.
So
you have something to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're that B2B style business, or I'm starting to think about our studio as a H to H business.
I love it.
I think that's something we should be telling ourselves that we are. But when you are in that space, LinkedIn is king for that stuff. Yeah. And so a LinkedIn newsletter, if you are one of those people who already have a ton of connections, it will instantly, when you start that, it goes to everyone in your system, in your network, and says, hey, do you want to subscribe to my newsletter? And it goes as a notification to their inbox.
Yes.
So it is, if you were just starting a podcast, having that capability to ping everybody and say, hey, check out my podcast, and I'll be sending weekly or monthly or whatever updates about it, that is a huge win.
Yes. I agree. I'm like most podcasts I listen to, they do have this accompanying email newsletter, which is helpful because sometimes because of there's certain podcasts I like to watch versus listen to. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes when I get that newsletter, I'm like, oh, this is what they're talking about. They're giving me such a preview. I'm like, no. I actually think I want to watch or listen to that full conversation. So yeah, there's just so many benefits for visibility, whether it's through LinkedIn's algorithm, whether it's just like you owning that distribution list. So that way, kind of fickle, different things that happen in these platforms, you're not as affected by it.
Yeah.
I love it.
I've got another thing with that too.
Great.
One of the things that we're going to be talking about here, I mean, obviously we're talking about these pillars. Each one of these things is a lot of different things you have to do around your podcast.
Yep.
So allow me to quote Ron Swanson, a little bit of salty language for a second, but he said, he was talking to Leslie Knope, and he says, basically, you're half-assing a bajillion things at once. Whole ass one thing.
Yes.
Do one thing well. So one of the things that I think about when it comes to newsletters, the amount of people out there that are espousing the value of AI generated newsletters.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Yep. It is terrible for you, honestly, because I was listening to an episode of Diary of a CEO with Simon Sinek the other day. Yeah. He was commenting on AI. And now obviously Simon Sinek is, a leadership guru. He has a lot of interesting perspectives on how the world works. I've got his book right there.
Right.
Start with why. He's writing a book right now on friendship. And I think one of the things that he is noticing in the midst of all this AI stuff, we're going to have and continue to have this moment where AI is cool. And it is what everyone is talking about, and it is growing and growing and growing, and everyone's going to use it, and it's going to become so commonplace eventually that AI will be like everyone having a phone in the pocket.
Right.
It will be that thing.
Yep.
But what that's going to create is a premium on human relationship and human content.
Yep.
And so when we look at things like a newsletter, people are going to immediately wonder, is this AI?
Yeah.
They're going to immediately wonder that. And one of the things that Stephen Bartlett was saying in that interview with Simon Sinek is people are going to actually put a premium on spelling mistakes again.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry for all you English majors and whatever, but it's a thing.
Yeah. So one of the things that, when going back to the original quote, you need to whole ass every single one of these things.
Yep.
Because if you are not taking the time with each one of these things to make it great, it will backfire on you.
Yes.
Because people will just think, oh, they didn't spend that much time, or it will become eventually unreadable. AI still to this day, and I think it will for a long time, it still hallucinates, it still makes things up. Yep. You don't want to say the wrong thing in your newsletter that will eventually alienate somebody who could have been a fantastic person that would be listening to your show.
Yep, I agree. And keep mentioning Angie because she just like said all the things, and it's like, yes. Angie was talking about, especially on LinkedIn, you can't solely copy and paste directly from AI. So I'm gonna spill the tea a little bit here on my process. So what I do is I will take the transcript from the podcast. I will throw it into ChatGPT, and I will ask it to just remind me of, if I haven't taken notes already, like what are some of the main points, and what were some like really good quotes that were associated with it that we hit in the podcast. I will use those, but then I will write everything, like kind of my commentary beneath each one of those points.
Yes.
And for those of you who read it, I hope it makes sense. But like I've realized that, this is something that I'm seeing more and more from different people that I'm connected with. They're saying like, if I can tell this is AI, I skip it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be skippable.
Yeah.
Like, don't let anybody skip you because you skimped out and half-assed this thing.
Yep.
And it's like, we really, I think it goes back to, what are you just creating content to create content, or are you trying to create value? I think value comes from humans, and AI. I told you, AI is a great tool. I use it. We use it as a part of our multicam editing process.
Yeah.
But we select the short form clips.
Mm-hmm.
I write kind of the body. I use AI and pick and choose what headers to use for different things. Heck, I'll use it for titles all day long. I feel like it's still better at some title stuff than I'm personally.
Yeah.
Brian's actually a little bit different. But like, there's things in my brain that I want to communicate. And to be honest, like, I want people to feel like I've put work into this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I could have ChatGPT potentially take the transcript from this video and make this PDF for you, right? I'm probably gonna like modify a couple things, so make sure you can read my handwriting. But like, I'm going to give you this PDF for you to download because like, I think it's going to be valuable.
Yeah.
So are you honoring your audience, and are you giving value?
Yeah.
I think AI can't really do that.
On top of that, I think the question, and we're getting deep in the weeds of AI, but like, are you honoring yourself?
Yeah,
because
for sure.
I think one of the things that's really hard to think about is you're in this space of creating content and building a brand, building whatever this is around your podcast, but are you actually growing yourself while you do it?
Which Simon Sinek, again, and I'll link to this episode in the show notes too.
It was great.
Simon Sinek actually, I think he was the one who talked about this. I feel like it was him.
It was him. He was talking about the idea of, he used to be a steel trap for phone numbers.
Yes, that's what it was.
So he said, I used to know everybody's phone number until the mobile phone came around, and I stored all of the contacts. Yes, I knew all this stuff.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, it's gone. Like, it was interesting. I knew my parents' phone number. I knew my home phone number. I knew my buddies' phone numbers. I knew all that. But then by the time I had a cell phone, because I think cell phones were really starting when I was end of my, around when I was like 10, something like that was when they were really becoming a thing. I was 16, got my first phone because I was out doing jobs, and I recognize to this day, I do not know my sister's phone number. Because by the time
I don't know my brother's, or my mom's.
By the time she got a phone, it was in a phone book, and I didn't have to memorize it.
Yes.
So to this day, no clue what her phone number is. Still know my parents'.
I only know my dad's because his was the first cell phone of the family. And then I only know my wife's phone number, to be honest, because when my wife
It's Kroger fuel points. That's what it is.
Well,
isn't it?
it's also my daughter will recite it because she's heard my wife say it so many times for different things personally.
But the reason I just say that is it's really important to try and develop your skills while you do this.
Yes.
The more you automate a lot of the process of these 3 pillars, the less you will actually get better as you grow.
Yeah. Actually, this was an interesting thing. So our good buddy Mike Sipple in the Unconventional Leadership Podcast.
Yes.
He had one of his faculty come on, and she was talking about really questioning what things should you automate and what things should not be automated. I think that's a helpful question because there's some things you all should not be doing. Like AI, let AI do that all day.
Yeah.
But then there are some things that are just so human and so intrinsically valuable if you spend the time to do it and you're not losing the muscle, the ability to do that kind of thing. I think is genius. So I love Daniel Priestley, and he is so good at coming up with hooks all the time. And I realized, so while I've been using ChatGPT a lot for that kind of thing, I noticed there's a difference between you and I in that you're actually way better at your muscle for creating catchy hooks is better than mine because you have. I don't think you've been relying on it as much as I have.
I don't think so. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's just something in me that I'm like, I want to develop that skill.
Yeah.
And Daniel Priestley, he had a mentor say, hey, just every day write down, I forget how many hooks just from different things.
50 or something like that. Yeah.
A day.
Yeah.
And just keep doing. I'm like, that's brilliant. So that's all that to say. It is very important, like you were saying from the great Ron Swanson, don't half-ass things, whole-ass whatever it is that you do.
Yes. Yes.
As we like to say from the Bible, work wholeheartedly.
So, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay. That's good.
Pointing to the podcast, is there anything else that everybody must do, or are there just things you're like, maybe not everybody does this, but I've seen certain people do this and it's a really good idea?
I think not everyone has to do this.
Yeah.
But I would say that if you have the time to do this well, you should do this.
Okay.
Really good teasers.
Yeah.
Work well.
Yeah.
I saw a LinkedIn ad the other day for a guy who was having a conversation with, I want to say it was some CEO or VP or something like that at GE.
Okay.
And they were the person themselves, I don't think. Oh no, it was actually, sorry, I was way off. It was Bill Gates. He was having a conversation with Bill Gates.
Okay.
And so I saw the trailer pop up as an ad on my feed.
Yes,
Remember
I
sent
that.
you that one.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is an amazing ad because I sat there and was like, oh, this is really interesting.
Yep.
I want to learn about this. I want to go watch that episode.
Yep.
And so if you can have a really good trailer, which also, spoiler, you can make that the intro to your main video. You can make it the hook to your video.
Yeah.
If you have a really great trailer, I think that is, especially if you're willing to put some ad dollars behind, I think is a really valuable way to potentially point people to your show.
Yep. I love it. I love it. The only other thing I would add, and actually I'm going to add this to that everybody should do.
Yeah.
If you have a guest, make sure you equip that guest or talk with them or something to make sure they're also promoting the podcast.
Yes.
I can't tell you the amount of times we've experienced or we've seen people have a guest on, but their guest doesn't promote the podcast.
And I know I'm bad at this. I send my guests emails the day that it's launching.
Sure.
I should probably be sending them an email a couple days before so that they can get their marketing plan in place of how they're going to do some stuff too.
Totally.
That would honor them better.
Yes.
Especially because I'm working with business owners who may want to share this sort of content.
Yes.
But I think that is a very valuable ad. Everyone should make sure that, especially if you're a guest-based show, that they are ready to share, post, do all that sort of stuff, because that's one of the easiest ways to capture somebody else's audience.
Yeah.
And grow your show.
I love that. All right.
And grow your podcast.
Grow your podcast. Let's go. All right. So these are things that point to the podcast.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about engage around your podcast. So what are some ways you've seen people do really well with engaging around the podcast? So it could be listening, watching, or the content around it.
Well, I mean, we've talked about it in other episodes, I think, but it's the big talking point in any video industry right now. If they don't click, they won't watch.
Yes, don't click, don't watch. Yep.
So like titles and thumbnails are huge.
Yep.
Huge.
Like, I don't think it's not just a really, 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 really good idea.
Huge.
It is critical. It is like most creators would say you actually have to think about title and thumbnail before you even think about content.
Yes.
So that's how big of a deal. It's like first priorities, first things first, title and thumbnail. Yeah.
I wanted to do like a Trump impression right there. Like, it's huge. It's huge.
It's
It's the biggest. Like, I saw this thumbnail the other day. I looked at it. I was like, wow, that's a really good thumbnail.
Beautiful.
Oh, it's so bad.
Yes. So title and thumbnails.
Title and thumbnails, man. Like, and
So why is that so big?
like, here's the thing. Like, if you are a starting off podcast,
Yeah.
you do not have any distribution.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, unless if you're a person who already has a reputation, a brand, something like that, and you're adding a podcast onto it.
Yeah.
But if you're just starting out a podcast, you have to build from the ground floor.
Yeah.
And so every single person that is potentially experiencing you for the first time, what is the first thing they see?
Exactly.
A thumbnail and a title.
Yep.
Like, other than some of these things that we talked about in the first pillar of like what point to your podcast.
Yeah.
But those don't have the same reach that your title and your thumbnail will have.
Yep.
Because algorithms will suggest your content to people.
Yes.
But if they do not click, they will not be suggested anymore.
Exactly.
And so when you look at a title and thumbnail, there are some kind of key ideas behind how to make really good thumbnails.
Yeah.
We're still learning some of those because we're experimenting, trying to figure out exactly what it is. And like, a lot of times what people say is a good thumbnail may not work, and what people say is a bad thumbnail will work.
Yeah.
So it is really kind of nebulous at the moment, but there are some key principles. You can do a lot of learning about that out there. We recommend vidIQ.
Yeah.
It is a fantastic tool to try and help you say, hey, is this title actually interesting or catchy?
Yep.
Now, they do have an AI that will help you write them. Sometimes they're good. Use it with a grain of salt.
Yep.
It's still AI.
Yep.
And it doesn't know the context of your video very well.
Right.
And then thumbnails. The one thing I would point out with thumbnails is don't overpromise and underdeliver.
Yes. That is so key.
Yeah.
Say more.
So if you overpromise something and you say, let's say the video was, we have a podcast in a Lamborghini driving down the street.
Right.
And then the video opens up and you're on a tricycle. Like,
yeah.
People will never click on your videos again if they have the option, if they remember this.
This is a key moment.
Yes.
Especially for new people to establish trust.
Yes.
So if there's not a direct correlation between the title and thumbnail and the first few frames of the video, like you're screwed. Like,
so like let's point back to Colin and Samir again.
Yeah.
In fact, maybe you should throw in the Patty Galloway.
Is
it Patty Galloway?
Patty Galloway.
Yeah.
Yep.
Episode with him, because he talks about Colin and Samir actually talk about their rule for creating a really interesting hook at the beginning of the video. And they say you create a really awesome title, a really awesome thumbnail that make people click.
Yep.
And then in the first 9 seconds, you have to validate
Yep.
that they will get the information that they were coming for.
Yes.
And then within the first 30 seconds of the video, you need to give them more of a reason to stick around.
Yeah. Hook them with maybe another question of like, if you stick around,
yes,
this will happen.
Yes.
Yep.
So like,
and then make sure you deliver on that promise.
Yeah. And this can be the driest of things.
Yeah.
Like, you can have a conversation about accounting. Yeah. I'm sorry, accountants. It's not the most interesting thing to a creative like me. My sister, sorry, sister. I apologize.
Sorry.
But like, you can make it interesting.
Yeah.
Like when you have these conversations, you can start with like the title and thumbnail could be like how to save 20% off your taxes this year.
Yep.
And then the thumbnail could have something else that's also catchy around the same lines.
Yep.
Usually you don't want the title and the thumbnail to say the same thing.
Right.
That is a little tip there.
They should complement but not say the exact. Yeah.
But then the first thing out the gate should be something relating to that 20% number.
Yeah, saving 20% on taxes. Most people don't know how they can save 20% on taxes. Blah,
Something
blah, blah.
like that, yeah. Should validate that reason. And then eventually, like in that intro, you should talk a little bit about like maybe you had an interesting story about how this one time they found a $400,000 mistake in their accounting, and then but because they implemented this process, they were able to save their business from this massive headache.
Yep.
Like if you start with that hook and then give them another reason to be like, oh, I should maybe stick around for this, then people at least give you enough time of day to keep listening.
If they don't click, they won't watch.
No.
And we're specifically talking about the video portion on YouTube. So
Except the same thing on a podcast app.
The thumbnail matters a little bit less, but definitely the title matters. And it really helps to make sure you do that and you're honoring your audience. So engaging.
Yeah.
First rule of engagement is that they actually click on the thing.
Can I say one other thing?
Yeah.
One other thing. I'm going too long on this because this, we're passionate about this stuff, but don't do long titles.
It's true.
Because there are character limits on what can be shown online.
Yes.
Like the amount of...
And you have to think about all the different ways your audience might interact with it, and it's less on a phone. So if your audience is watching your stuff or listening to your stuff on a phone, it's even less. So making sure you front load the title.
Yep.
And even like, I feel like unless you have a super well-known guest, like Colin and Samir do this a lot of times, even with super famous people, but they will say, this kind of expert does something. And that way it's like, you don't have to be in the know about who this person is, but you do know they're an expert in this kind of thing. And if that's interesting to you, you'll engage.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. So like with my accounting example, like accounting guru explains how to save 20%.
Yep.
Or how to get 20% off your taxes or something like that. Like, now you don't always have to use the guest as part of the title.
Yes.
But like it lends credence.
Yes.
That you're saying, hey, someone who knows what they're talking about is having this conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. So, okay, once they've engaged with the video or audio or whatever, what are some other things that either everybody needs to do or you've seen other people do this and it's pretty awesome?
There's a couple different things. I think one of them in the video itself, in the podcast itself, you need to have a moment where you actually ask people to subscribe.
Ah, yes.
Like
and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. You've seen it on YouTube for a super long time, but now even the biggest shows are still asking people to subscribe.
Yep.
Stephen Bartlett, when he starts his episode, he'll do his hook, he'll do his intro, and then he says, hey, the only thing I will ever ask of you is that you subscribe and potentially share this with somebody who could benefit from this.
Yes.
That's all he does. And then he launches into the episode.
Yep.
Now, an interesting thing that a lot of people did on YouTube back in the day is they would say like and subscribe at the end. Most people don't stick around for an entirety of a podcast episode.
Right.
So putting that somewhere near the beginning before you lose people.
Yep.
Because maybe your average listen time, and luckily YouTube and Spotify now gives you these metrics of average listen time.
Yep.
Put that somewhere inside of that average listen time.
Yep.
So that people will still subscribe and come back.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also helpful to just again in the whole thing, maybe even in the comments, encourage people to whatever your call to action is, and we can talk about that in a minute, but just like we're thinking about like, okay, the video is on YouTube, you ask them to like and subscribe, and then you have the description, but even in the first pinned comment, like that's another way of making sure you really engage with people. I think one thing that's maybe not everybody needs to do this, but I listened to a podcast recently with Omar El-Takori and Daniel Priestley. He was interviewing Daniel. What he does is he has like, and this kind of straddles two of the pillars a little bit, but what Omar does is he interviews his guest, but it's actually, he has his inner circle on the podcast, like listening to it live. And then at the end, they're able to like turn on their camera and ask the guest a question.
Ooh,
and
that's
so there's like
good.
a whole segment at the end where the guest is interacting with this specific circle of people.
Yeah.
And that's just a really cool engagement strategy to like get people, however you're trying to get them into your inner circle, whether it's a paid thing or whatever, like having that as a feature is really good. Yeah. And then people like me who weren't in the inner circle, we got to hear the episode afterwards.
Yep.
But those people got to hear it live and actually interact with the guests, which was crazy. Like having that opportunity to interact with Daniel Priestley when like maybe you've never been able to, like that seemed like really cool.
Fantastic way to monetize your podcast.
Yeah.
Just saying. Put that as a Patreon benefit where somebody can be a part of the live thing and potentially get called on to ask a question.
Yeah.
Dope.
Exactly.
Like, and that is very little extra effort on your end. You just have to have the ability for someone to live call in.
Exactly.
That is not hard at all. But I think in the same space there that I think is probably required because algorithms dictate that they will boost the content if this happens.
Yeah.
Is you need to be engaged with your audience.
Yep.
Somehow. So you either need to ask an engaging question in the podcast that people talk about in the comments.
Yep.
And you need to be in the comments with those people.
Yes.
Having conversations.
Right. So it'd be important then to not just ask the question in the podcast, but maybe say in the comments below.
Yes. And then be there.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, all right. So yeah, we need to make sure, all right, you ask questions
and engage comments.
And engage comments.
Yeah. And don't, like, another thing when we're back to the LinkedIn space, they actually measure the length of comments that you get, like character counts, to tell if it is an engaged comment or not.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's an interesting one about LinkedIn. Yeah. So like when they talk about engagements and like if this is like, oh, hey, this is trending on LinkedIn, they trend it based upon are people giving real replies that are interesting and valuable, not just like, oh, that was interesting, or got you, yep, amen, or praise hands, or you know, that sort of thing. Like that doesn't work for engagement. So what we need to be doing as creators is giving thoughtful, honest, real replies to our guests who are commenting and to our listeners, because otherwise the algorithm can tell.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's great. All right. Before we move on to the last pillar, are there any other things that everybody needs to do or just really good ideas that you've seen for engaging with the actual podcast itself?
I think one of the things I've been thinking about recently, and I'm thinking about enacting this in my own show, over the years, I think one of the big breakout podcasts that I listened to back in the day that I don't think is making any live episodes anymore is How I Built This with Guy Raz.
Oh, yeah.
I loved that show. One of the things, though, that he started to do was he created moments that I expected to happen.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is he asked at the end of every single interview the exact same question of every person who sat in that space. And he asked them this question. So I was always curious to hear, what is this person going to say about this? Like, and the reason why I think that's a valuable insight is I think there needs to be a format. You need to have a repeatable, consistent format with your episodes, because I think that creates a process where people will know what to expect when they get into your show. Like I was listening to another Colin Samir episode. They were interviewing Nico from Corridor Digital on YouTube. And they were asking him about their new show on their second channel, Corridor Crew, called VFX Artists React. It's one of the bigger shows on YouTube now, where they basically stumbled into a format, and every time you go into this episode, you know what you're going to expect. Like it's going to be it's going to be one of them or a couple of them, maybe a VFX pro or a celebrity or something like that. And you're going to look at movies and TV shows and laugh at how things happen and how they could have done it better. Or, oh, that was really amazing, or that sort of thing. So every single podcast needs to have a format.
Yeah.
So when you go through it, you either, like, I then think of the Sean Ryan show. He asks his Patreon subscribers, he says, hey, I'm going to have this person on this episode.
Yeah.
Whoever writes the most interesting question, I will ask that question live on the episode.
Yeah.
Stephen Bartlett, he loves to do things where the last guest on his episode will write a question for the next guest without knowing who the person is.
Yes, I love that.
I think that's super interesting. He did start a new thing too, where he started to say, hey, bring something with you that has deep meaning to you, and let's talk about why. So those sort of things, anything you can do that create repeatable moments.
And that expectation.
And that expectation is going to happen.
Yeah.
I think will keep people coming back.
Yeah.
If only for a little bit in their mind, like, I wonder what they're going to talk about this time.
Yeah.
Or I wonder, like, what's the item that they're going to bring this time?
Yep.
Or so I think I would just call that repeatable moments.
Yep. That's great. And I think so tagging on to something you sort of said, and then this sort of also is a little bit of pointing back to the podcast, but something that happens in the podcast is asking people like on social media, like ask me. So ask me anything, right?
Yeah.
I've had people. So there's one podcast. You guys have heard me talk a lot about the Pro Church Tools podcast. But one of the things they did that was super awesome was they're like on their stories, you could ask them any question. Sometimes they would respond right away, and sometimes they'd be like, oh, maybe this is podcast worthy. So like at the end of their episode, they would go through and answer all these questions. And then I was like, who are they going to answer mine? And then I was so stoked when it was mine.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
It's a huge way to be able to connect with people. So Q&As or repeatable moments that people always know are coming, I think are going to be a huge value add for your show that will eventually, I think, make some really interesting content. We even have a show in our own studio. They added the ability to start reacting to pop culture moments live on their show.
Yep.
And I honestly believe that I think that is going to be a huge highlight of their show for their guests.
Exactly.
And I think he even said that those reactions were getting tons of views on YouTube.
Right, yes.
Because they're hilarious as people.
Right.
Like I love listening to them because they're so funny.
Yes.
But then they're talking about things that are in pop culture and bringing that in together.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got pointing to the podcast. We have engaging with the podcast. And then the last pillar we have is how do you use the podcast to point to your services or products?
Well, I think this goes back to kind of our first episode that you and I were on together, where we talk about like, what's the ROI of the podcast?
Yeah.
So like when you're thinking about why you're creating this podcast and why you're doing this podcast, you need to understand how you can make the money from it or sustain it.
Yep.
In a way. Like we look at the Mr. Beast of the world. He doesn't actually make that much money on his videos. The money is made on Feastables right now. Like
he makes a lot of money. He just reinvests it in the next video.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right.
He makes a ton of money on Feastables.
Yep.
In fact, to the point that he will spend $1 million, $2 million to make another video.
Yeah.
And the only sponsor on it is Feastables.
Yeah.
So like the big thing that you need to think about with your podcast, most people think that if I can start a podcast, I'm going to be like Joe Rogan, and my podcast is the product.
Yep, that's it.
It's not the product.
Self-sustaining, all the different things, and you're right. Yeah.
Unless if you have been podcasting for years and you have grown a massive audience, it's not the product.
Yep.
It's not the product. Like even The Diary of a CEO, that show, Stephen Bartlett and the show is kind of a product, but that is not where he makes the most of his money.
Right.
He makes his money in Flight Story.
Yep.
And so all the ads you hear in there and all of the moments he does, he just uses it as a platform to sell the other things that he's invested in and grown and those sort of things.
It's a little bit like, so Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
They started out ad free, then they added in ads. So they had a platform. Now you throw in the ads, now they can make money.
And Justin Timberlake says it's cool when you don't have ads.
Right.
Apparently.
Right.
I don't know. Whatever. Weird moment. Anyway, sorry.
Oh my gosh. Yes. That is from The Social Network. I
think people caught on.
Yeah. Just making sure Justin Timberlake was not involved with Facebook. So yeah, the idea is, so you have this platform of a podcast. So like in our episodes, we run our own ads. Like we have ads within the podcast to point to products and services, essentially.
Yes. Our studio.
Come check out our studio.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one of the things too we've noticed is like, obviously we're uniquely positioned being podcasters and have a studio that we rent to people.
Right.
Like it's unique addition we can do with our thing.
Exactly.
But it worked really freaking well.
Yeah.
Like, excuse my language, but like the weird thing was that we were seeing people and hearing from people all over talking about the podcast studio in Cincinnati.
Yep.
Like we had our friends come up to us and say, "Oh, I am hearing about you guys all the time."
Yep.
Like from people.
Yep.
And so I think the thing that you can really bank on is one, podcasts go further than you think.
Mm-hmm.
They reach out to a lot of people, and the ability to be able to sell something that is loosely connected to your podcast is a huge win. Yeah. So productization, creating a product in some way that your show is pointing to is how you can easily make way more money than trying to monetize the podcast itself.
And it doesn't... The next piece doesn't even have to be something paid. It could be like you should go to the link in our description and check out our video podcast fit assessment. So like seriously, if you go into our description, you'll be able to go and for free assess yourself. It'll lead you through some questions we've kind of come up with and try to figure out, okay, based off of who you are, kind of what resources you have or whatever, is video podcasting a good fit for you? Mm-hmm. You get that information for free. Now, spoiler, you're in the pipeline. You'll get this email newsletter now. But like it'll tell people, oh, I need to be a part of this now, or you'll get their email or whatever. And so it's very important to figure out how can you use the podcast as a way to point people towards your products and services. Maybe you just need like a little bridge to get them in that customer journey.
They call it a lead magnet.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that would be another point that I would recommend everybody have is a lead magnet of some sort that you can point people to.
Yep.
Right now, my show actually doesn't do that, and I think I really should create something.
You need
like
an
that.
assessment.
I need an assessment or a lead magnet, something. Right. But I think that would bring a lot of value to your people.
Yeah,
and then it once again demonstrates your authority in the space.
100%. Yes,
exactly. And then it's just a cyclical line of trust. And if you do something like a lead magnet that requires an email, then you get them onto your newsletter and then they get pointed to the next episode.
Exactly.
So one of the things that's about these pillars is it's not linear. it's almost like a wheel.
It actually goes around like this.
Yep.
You rinse and repeat.
You bring it around.
Yes.
I got ahead of us a little bit on that one.
No,
but that's what happens.
Yeah.
You get to this point where all of a sudden you can use this pipeline that they just brought people through.
Yeah.
And all of these services then point things back. Because okay, we brought an intern into the studio the other day.
Yeah.
So we were trying to create some sort of a fun gift for him. Guess what we did? We bought a Feastables bar. Because we're like, hey, let's get some creator chocolate and put it in.
Yes. Yes.
And but then of course, the moment you see Feastables, you think of Mr. Beast, you think of videos.
Exactly.
So the same thing with any of the things that you can create for your podcast. The moment that people see it, they think of your podcast and they think, oh, I wonder what the next thing is that's happening with them.
Yeah. It's almost like, what can you associate your brand with? Because that's exactly what Mr. Beast does. That's what Daniel Priestley talks about with these assessments and trying to get people to fill them out and different things. Like, you get to be known for a specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
You have your podcast, but you're also known for this thing.
Yes.
And so just kind of like, especially if you have a personal brand or you have a business, like, you're already something probably outside of the podcast. Use the podcast to promote that thing.
Yes.
That's going to be your biggest win, and that's how you actually really that's why we say these are the 3 pillars for effective podcasting. We want this to be effective for you. We think efficacy comes from will give you ROI, right? And so if you kind of think through these things, start with one thing and then put systems around it. Like, you just create systems to make sure you do these things, you will have an effective podcast over time.
100%. I completely agree. And another thing that I think that that people can think about if they're trying to monetize their podcast specifically, and so we'll put this in pillar 3, I guess, is I do firmly believe that Patreon is actually a value asset that you can give people. And I think it is something that you can point your show towards if you have some form of an audience. Not a zero audience game. That doesn't usually work very well. But in an interview with the CEO of Patreon, he was talking about how he is directly trying to engage podcasters with Patreon.
Right.
Like, they're trying to create tools about Patreon. And actually, Patreon now offers free memberships. So you don't actually have to be paid to be on a tier inside of Patreon. And so the ability for you, for those who don't know what Patreon is basically the ability for people to subscribe to you and they get bonus content on top of it.
Yep.
It's the old Kickstarter model. If you help give money to start something on Kickstarter, you will get extra bonus on top of it.
100%.
Sort of thing. So it's the same thing with recurring content. So basically, people subscribe monthly, they get access to something interesting. So if you're doing a podcast, it can be maybe you edit your podcast down from a 2-hour interview to a 1-hour video. Well, maybe your Patreon subscribers get the whole 2 hours.
Right. Actually, so so Todd Henry does this, and he puts between 10 to 20 minute episode on for free for everybody. But if you want, and his podcasts are very intricate. They have different segments and different things. But then when he interviews his guest, you get the full blown thing on his app. And so
you pay for.
That's huge.
That is even the biggest media companies in the world are currently doing that. Like a lot of news platforms right now love to do this, especially if they're like talk shows. It'll be a half-hour podcast that you get, but then the full episode is available if you are a paid subscriber at whatever.com.
Exactly. No, that's great. I think these are awesome pieces. You know, I'm sure if we sat down here longer, we'd be able to come up with more. But whatever you do, whatever people end up doing, thinking through these pieces of point to the podcast, engage with the podcast, and then use the podcast to point to products and services, that really is going to be your best method, at least that we've seen so far, for creating an effective podcast ecosystem.
One thing I will say on this, there are 3 pillars here with a bajillion things on them.
Yeah.
Don't do them all.
Start with one.
Start with one. Do that really great. Choose what you think is going to be like, I think in business world, they call them like DMAs. What is your difference making activity that you can be doing that will grow your podcast the fastest?
Yep.
So is it creating short form clips, or is it better titles and thumbnails?
Yep.
Like, it could be anywhere inside of those 3 pillars.
Yep.
Look at this, download the PDF that we will make available for you guys and use it as a method to understand what is it that I am currently doing, what is it that I need to do, and what is it that I actually have capacity to do well before you attempt to try and do everything. Because that's just a recipe for burnout.
Exactly. Yeah. Start with one. Start with title and thumbnail, actually. But then, move on to the other pieces 100%. So, dude, thanks so much.
It's been good.
Super helpful.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're getting any value out of this conversation, would you please like, subscribe, rate, review, share this video, do all the things, and get the word out about this podcast. We are really trying to help podcasters like you, brand builders like you, use video podcasts in the best way possible. Thank you so much for your time, attention, and trust, and we will see you next time.